This is one of those games that had a different name in every area it was released in. The Japanese title is translated as Downtown Hot-Blooded Story. In America, it was River City Ransom, and in PAL, it's Street Games. I never played this in its heyday, but it's got a pretty good reputation, so I'll see how it holds up today. First impressions, yet another Double Dragon clone. Before long though, I realised that it's more advanced than that. For one, the characters all have little bits of dialogue down the bottom of the screen, which is, well, it's different for a beat 'em up anyway. And when you pause the game, you begin to realise that this is some kind of weird RPG hybrid. Your character has stats that can be boosted and levelled up as he goes about his manic rampage. There are also shops that you can buy upgrades and new moves from. I don't know, I just couldn't get into this. I can see that in gameplay terms it's a big step up from Double Dragon, but I just didn't feel the love with Street Games. Apart from the light RPG element, it's still just another beat 'em up. I reckon I would have got into it if I'd played it back in 1991, but 20 years on, yeah, it just didn't do it for me. I've lost count of the amount of times I've finished Mega Man 2, so playing it again is really just going through the paces. Seriously, I reckon I could play through this with my eyes closed. If you want a real challenge, try playing it on difficult mode, which was the original Japanese setting and the only mode available in the Wily Wars and the Anniversary Collection. It gets nasty hard, especially towards the end of the game. So, being the first sequel, Capcom made so many improvements. The original game had a lot of potential and cool ideas, but it just wasn't really polished enough to be a true classic. In Mega Man 2, just about every problem was fixed. First off, obviously, there's 8 bosses instead of 6, and this time they've got their own mugshots on the stage select screen. There's also passwords, so that the poor players wouldn't have to complete the entire game in one sitting. Generally, Mega Man's controls are tighter than they used to be, but they perfected the little robot's movements in Mega Man 3. He's still a little bit slippery on his feet here. Energy tanks are introduced, which was a massive help for some of the tougher bits. You're only limited to holding 4 though. After the initial 8 stages are completed, the following Dr. Wily stages are bigger and more challenging than in the previous game too. And lastly, instead of the single magnet platform from the first game, Mega Man collects 3 different items that he can use to create temporary platforms. So as everybody knows, a Mega Man game is only as good as its robot masters. So who do we have here? Bubble Man. His level is all about water. He'd probably be friends with Aquaman and Splash Woman. Airman lives high up in a flying fortress. Quickman. His level is an electric factory with painfully annoying energy beams that can only be stopped by Flashman's weapon. Woodman is found in a forest full of robotic bats, rabbits, and chickens, of course. Crashman is at the top of a tall tower, which has the game's coolest music. Flashman has the token slippery slidey level. Metal Man is hiding in an industrial factory full of conveyor belts. Lastly, Heat Man has flooded the sewer systems with flowing lava. This level has a very tricky block section that you can thankfully bypass with item 2. Generally, the bosses are all super easy, especially with the right weapon. As a bit of a joke, when you fight Metal Man the second time, a single hit with his own weapon will kill him. It's got a really weird ending. The final level sees Mega Man walking through an abandoned tunnel with what looks like blood dripping from the ceiling, and then Dr. Wily reveals himself to really be an alien? I won't spoil it by saying any more, except with all of the wonders of teleportation, Mega Man decides to walk all the way home. Overall, Mega Man 2 improved on its predecessor in just about every possible way. Still wasn't quite perfect though. I definitely remember this game with a huge amount of nostalgic affection, but I know that there is at least one other game in the series that improves on this one. I picked this game up on Virtual Console a few years back out of sheer curiosity. Lolo was a moderately well-known Nintendo character starring in 3 NES games. He's sort of like a precursor to Kirby. Instead of a pink blob, he's a blue blob tadpole kind of thing. Oh, who knows. The game itself is a very simplistic action puzzler. It's split up into floors, and Lolo has to collect all the hearts in a level, which then opens the treasure chest, which then opens the door. As levels go on, he comes up against more and more obstacles and trickier puzzles. It's okay, but it feels to me like this kind of game would be better suited to the Game Boy. I wish I had more patience, but it just couldn't keep my attention for very long. It still works, but I just didn't really enjoy it that much, so I'll say it sits. Very strange one, this. The most notable thing is it was made by Rare, who ended up being one of Nintendo's greatest partners in the Super Nintendo and 64 eras, and then fading into an embarrassing obscurity after being bought by Microsoft for a ridiculous amount of money. Snake, Rattle and Roll uses the same weird isometric viewpoint as Marble Madness, which drives me crazy. I feel like I have to tilt my head to play this game properly. The fundamentals of the game are fairly solid. You play as a snakehead, and you have to eat the little nibbly-pibblies to grow bigger, and when you're big enough you can open the door at the end of the level to progress. The graphics are great for an NES game, and there are some good concepts. I just found it really frustrating to play due to the isometric viewpoint and inability to judge three-dimensional depth. Some people might still find a fun challenge in it, but like Lolo, I just didn't have the patience, so this one sits as well.
Tune in next week, viewers, when you'll hear Irvine say...
Holy crap, when can I start playing some Super Nintendo games? Oh, peace out.